She sat there like this was already over. Back straight, chin lifted, eyes calm. If you didn't know the charges, you might think she was weighing for a verdict she'd already won. 17-year-old Mackenzie Shirilla believed she had outsmarted the system. Her defense said it was a tragic accident, a moment she couldn't remember, a teenage mistake followed by heartbreak. But in one courtroom moment, a single piece of evidence erased the performance. A video played, and everything she thought she controlled collapsed in real time. This is the case where technology spoke louder than lies and changed a life forever. Pushpin Paragraph 1, the image versus the reality. Mackenzie Shirilla looked directly at the judge with a confidence that unsettled everyone watching. There was no visible panic, no fear, almost a sense of ease, as if the courtroom was just another stop before she returned to a normal teenage life. Her legal team had spent months crafting that image, a young girl overwhelmed by grief, suffering from memory loss after a traumatic crash. According to the defense, she didn't remember what happened that night. According to them, she never intended harm. And for a while, that narrative worked. The courtroom listened. The language sounded reasonable. A car crash. Teenagers. Emotions running high. Accidents happen. But prosecutors weren't interested in how Mackenzie appeared. They focused on what she did. On July 31st, 2022, on a quiet street in Ohio, two young men, Dominic Russo and Davon Flanagan, lost their lives. The vehicle wasn't malfunctioning. The road wasn't dangerous. Weather wasn't a factor. What mattered was intention. And intention leaves patterns. The prosecution didn't rely on emotion. They relied on data, behavior, and Mackenzie's own words, spoken when she believed no one was listening carefully. One of the most damaging moments of the trial didn't come from police footage or surveillance cameras. It came from medical records. In the hours after the crash, while being treated at the hospital, Mackenzie spoke to medical staff. These weren't public statements. There were no cameras, no lawyers, no strategy. A trauma surgeon later testified about what was documented during those early hours. According to the medical notes read in court, Mackenzie expressed overwhelming guilt and responsibility for what had happened. She made statements indicating she blamed herself for the deaths, particularly that of her boyfriend. This mattered because it directly contradicted the defense's central claim that Mackenzie had no memory of the event. When questioned during trial, the doctor confirmed those words were recorded exactly as stated at the time. There was no suggestion they were misunderstood or miswritten. These weren't statements made months later after reflection or pressure. They were immediate, raw, unfiltered, and once spoken, they could never be erased. The defense attempted to minimize their significance, suggesting emotional confusion. But prosecutors emphasized timing. These words existed before any legal narrative was formed. That moment marked the beginning of the collapse. If you're finding this case as unsettling as it is revealing, take a second to like this video so more people can see how evidence, not emotion, decides justice. Now let's continue. The prosecution did reveal a side of Mackenzie the courtroom hadn't seen. Not through witnesses, but through her own online activity. Social media posts, messages, and videos from around the time of the incident painted a disturbing contrast to the innocent image presented in court. These weren't all posts from years earlier. They were recent, timed closely to the deterioration of her relationship with Dominic. Several posts reference themes of control, danger, and emotional dominance. Content that, when viewed alone, might seem like dark humor, but when placed alongside threats and real-world actions, told a different story. Investigators also presented evidence of escalating conflict. Messages, voicemails, statements showing possessiveness and volatility. The prosecution argued this wasn't random behavior. It was a documented emotional pattern, one that aligned with what happened at night. For the families sitting in the courtroom, watching those posts display was devastating. This was someone they had welcomed into their lives, trusted, cared about. Now, they were seeing a version of her preserved forever in digital history. Technology didn't speculate. It remembered. Body camera footage showed Mackenzie during her arrest. Calm, cooperative, polite. There was no visible shock when officers explained the charges. She followed instructions, asked procedural questions, adjusted jewelry. Small details, but details matter. To investigators, this composure stood in sharp contrast to the chaos of the scene itself. 2 lives lost, a destroyed vehicle, and yet she remained controlled. At sentencing, Mackenzie requested to stand while addressing the court. Observers noted the careful pacing of her words, the emotional tone, the pauses. She apologized, but stopped short of full responsibility. She spoke of love, of heartbreak, of memory loss. What she didn't say was just as important as what she did. She never acknowledged intent. She never acknowledged choice. Experts later noted moments of visible disagreement during the judge's statements, small gestures suggesting she still rejected the court's conclusion. The contrast was undeniable. Early private admissions versus a later public performance. The court didn't base its decision on a single statement or post. It looked at the full pattern. Threats made weeks earlier. Data showing acceleration. Surveillance footage. Digital behavior. Medical statements. Each piece alone raised questions. Together, they formed clarity. The judge found Mackenzie Shirilla guilty on 2 counts of murder. 1 for Dominic Russo, 1 for Davon Flanagan. In the end, it wasn't emotion that sealed her fate. It was consistency. Across time, across platforms, across moments when she believed no one was watching. Her own words became the evidence that dismantled her defense. This case is a reminder that in the modern world, actions leave trails. And when stories change, the truth doesn't. 2 families lost sons. 1 teenager lost her freedom. And a courtroom learned that silence and data can speak louder than any performance. What makes this case linger in people's minds isn't just the verdict. It's how ordinary everything looked right up until the end. There was no dramatic chase, no shadowy figure in the dark, no chaotic series of events that spiraled out of control. Instead, there was planning hidden in plain sight. A familiar route, a normal car, a teenage relationship filled with arguments that many might dismiss as typical emotional volatility. And that's what makes it unsettling. Because nothing about the setting screamed danger until it was too late. Investigators would later explain that modern cases like this are rarely solved by a single smoking gun. They are solved by patterns. Patterns of behavior. Patterns of escalation. Patterns of what people say when they think those words will disappear. Mackenzie Shirilla didn't wake up one day and suddenly become someone capable of taking lives. The prosecution argued that the signs were there long before the crash, embedded in messages, tone, threats, and choices that slowly cross lines without immediate consequences. What stood out during the trial was how often responsibility was shifted. If it wasn't memory loss, it was confusion. If it wasn't confusion, it was panic. If it wasn't panic, it was someone else's actions. This constant reframing became part of the defense strategy, but it also revealed something deeper, an inability to fully accept agency. And the court noticed, accountability isn't about remembering every second. It's about acknowledging that your decisions had irreversible outcomes. The families of Dominic Russo and Davon Flanagan sat through every day of testimony knowing there was no verdict that could give them what they lost. No sentence could rewind time or undo that night. For them, this trial wasn't about punishment alone. It was about truth. About hearing the court say out loud that what happened mattered, that it wasn't brushed aside as a tragic fluke or an unavoidable accident. When victim impact statements were delivered, the emotional weight in the room shifted. These weren't abstract losses. These were sons, friends, futures erased. Birthdays that would never come. Conversations that ended mid-sentence forever. And while the legal process must remain structured and controlled, those moments reminded everyone watching that behind every piece of evidence is a human absence. The judge's remarks reflected that balance, measured, firm, and deliberate. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about responsibility. The court emphasized that the evidence showed intentional conduct, not a momentary lapse or uncontrollable reaction. Data doesn't have emotions. Video doesn't reinterpret itself. Timelines don't bend to fit narratives. And when all of those elements align, the conclusion becomes unavoidable. If this case made you think, share this video so others can see how evidence reveals the truth. And let us know your thoughts respectfully in the comments. Subscribe to the channel for more true stories told with facts, not speculation.